The morning sun was bright and warm over the city, and the streets were slowly filling with people going to work or running errands. Officer Mark drove slowly along the main road in his patrol car, enjoying the quiet rhythm of his first hours on the morning shift. He had been a police officer for just over a year, and he still wanted to prove himself. Today, he told himself, he would watch carefully, notice everything, and make sure the streets were safe for everyone. As he moved past the intersections, his eyes caught a car that made him pause for a moment. It was a black, shiny vehicle, very clean and polished, almost too perfect to belong to someone ordinary. The tires gleamed, the paint reflected the sunlight, and the car moved with quiet confidence down the street. Mark slowed his car slightly, studying it. Something about it felt unusual. It was not speeding, it was not behaving strangely, but the car drew his attention in a way that he could not fully explain. Inside the car, Lena drove carefully, her hands steady on the steering wheel. She was calm, serene, and focused on the road ahead. Her morning had started early at the military base, where she had spent hours preparing for a special ceremony. Today, she would be wearing her full uniform, a symbol of her dedication and years of service. The uniform rested neatly in a protective bag in the back seat of the car. Lena had taken care to polish every badge, straighten every fold, and make sure every detail was perfect. Mark watched the car as it moved along the road. He knew he should focus on the streets, but something about the car kept pulling his attention. He tried to convince himself that it was nothing, just a luxury car on a quiet street. Yet, he could not shake the thought that something was unusual. Perhaps it was the way the car seemed too well kept, too precise, too deliberate. He reached for the radio and called a routine check-in, then told himself that it might be worth a closer look. After a moment of hesitation, he switched on the patrol lights, signaling the driver to pull over. Lena noticed immediately and carefully moved to the side of the road. She stopped the car, keeping it perfectly aligned with the curb. She turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and waited quietly, hands resting lightly on her lap. Mark parked behind the car and stepped out of the patrol vehicle. His boots clicked on the asphalt as he walked toward Lena's car. She rolled down the window politely and gave him a small, respectful nod. Mark noticed her calm demeanor. Unlike many drivers he had stopped before, she did not seem nervous or defensive. She seemed aware, collected, and fully in control of herself. "Good morning, ma'am," Mark said, trying to keep his voice firm but professional. "Can I see your driver's license, registration, and insurance, please?" Lena smiled politely and handed him the documents without hesitation. Her hands were steady, and her movements were smooth. Mark took the papers and studied them carefully. Everything was in order. The license was valid. The registration matched the car. The insurance was up to date. He nodded silently. Yet he could not shake the feeling that something was unusual about the situation. He asked Lena to step outside the car. She nodded, opened the door, and stepped onto the pavement gracefully. Her posture was straight, her expression calm. Mark noticed that she carried herself with a quiet confidence. There was no fear in her eyes, no anger, just a calm awareness that made Mark pause for a moment. "Do you know why I stopped you, ma'am?" he asked, trying to find the right words. Lena shook her head gently. "No, officer, I was driving carefully. I am on my way to an important ceremony, and I am trying to reach on time," she said politely. Her voice was calm, clear, and steady. Mark hesitated. He could see the honesty in her eyes, yet a small part of him still felt suspicious. He told himself it was his duty to ask questions, to make sure everything was in order. "The car, it looks very expensive," he said slowly. "I just want to make sure everything is legitimate. Do you mind if I ask a few questions about it?" Lena nodded politely again. "Of course, officer. I understand your duty. I bought this car a few years ago and it has been well maintained. I have all the documents ready," she said, reaching subtly toward the glove compartment to indicate where the paperwork could be found if needed. Mark felt a little uneasy. Normally, people would argue or get defensive when asked about such a thing, but Lena did not. She spoke calmly, without raising her voice, without showing annoyance. Mark could not tell if it was the car, the way she handled herself, or something else entirely that made him feel unsure. "May I check the inside of the car, ma'am?" he asked cautiously. Lena hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Yes, officer, you may. Please be gentle with the papers and my bag in the back seat," she said softly. Mark opened the car slowly. He noticed the seats were clean, the dashboard polished, and everything arranged neatly. Then his eyes fell on the back seat, where a green bag rested quietly. It was plain and simple, yet something about it drew his attention. He stepped closer and saw that inside the bag was a neatly folded uniform. There were shiny badges on the top, badges that caught the morning sun and reflected it like gold. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He realized instantly that the uniform was not ordinary. He stepped back slightly, unsure how to react. Lena stood outside the car, waiting patiently, her calm expression still unchanged. She did not flinch. She did not make a sound. Yet her presence seemed to fill the space with quiet authority. Mark tried to collect himself. He had seen many uniforms in his life, but this one looked different. It had layers of decorations, symbols, and badges that he had only ever read about. His throat went dry as he realized that this was a high-ranking uniform, a rank that commanded respect and attention. He returned to Lena, trying to keep his voice steady. "May I ask whose uniform that is, ma'am?" Lena smiled faintly, a polite but confident smile. "It is mine," she said simply. Mark blinked. He could not believe what he had just heard. He opened his mouth to speak but found no words. His mind raced. This woman, calm and collected, driving an expensive car, had a rank far above anything he had imagined. He had stopped her thinking she was an ordinary driver. Now he realized how wrong he had been. Lena remained patient, watching him with understanding eyes. She knew that people sometimes judged too quickly, based on appearances or assumptions. She had faced such moments many times in her career, and had learned to handle them with grace and patience. Mark's hands shook slightly as he returned the documents to her. He realized that his actions, though done with duty in mind, had been unnecessary and wrong. He felt a deep sense of embarrassment and regret. Lena, however, remained calm, showing no sign of anger or frustration. Her calmness only made him more aware of his mistake. For a long moment, neither spoke. Mark stood quietly thinking about what he had done. Lena stood next to her car, her posture straight, her hands relaxed, her calm expression never changing. In that moment, Mark learned an important lesson about respect, patience, and the danger of making judgments too quickly. Finally, he found his voice. I apologize, ma'am," he said carefully. "I did not mean to cause any trouble. I should have known better. I am sorry for stopping you without cause." Lena nodded gently. "I understand, officer," she said. "You are doing your job. I respect that. Let us remember that appearances can be deceiving, and it is always better to remain patient and fair." Mark felt a wave of relief mixed with respect. He realized that this encounter would stay with him for a long time. Lena, without anger or complaint, had taught him a lesson in humility and patience. She had shown him that true respect was earned, not assumed, and that judging someone based on appearances was always risky. As Lena prepared to leave, she opened her car door with careful hands. Mark stepped aside, giving her space. He watched as she slipped into the driver's seat, her movements smooth and graceful. She started the engine, her calmness a striking contrast to the tension he had felt earlier. Mark saluted, almost automatically, and Lena gave him a small nod of acknowledgement before driving smoothly back onto the main road. Her car moved with quiet elegance, leaving Mark standing by the curb, reflecting deeply on the morning's events. After Lena drove away, the quiet hum of the morning streets returned, but Officer Mark could not stop thinking about what had just happened. He leaned against his patrol car, staring at the road where her shiny black car had disappeared. His mind replayed every moment, every word, every detail of her calm expression and the uniform he had seen in the back seat. The realization of her rank made him feel both embarrassed and amazed. He had stopped someone of such importance without even knowing it. Mark tried to focus on his patrol duties, but his thoughts kept returning to Lena. He remembered the neatness of her car, the way she had handled the stop with respect and patience, and the quiet authority she carried even outside her uniform. It was unusual for someone so composed to drive alone, especially in a car that drew so much attention. He felt a mix of admiration and regret. He knew he had learned a valuable lesson, one that could not be taught in training. Meanwhile, Lena continued her journey calmly. The streets of the city were now busier, filled with cars, buses, and people walking to their destinations. She adjusted her mirrors, kept her hand steady on the wheel, and maintained her focus. Today was important. The ceremony at the military base was a special event where she would be recognized for her service, and she could not afford any distractions as she drove. She thought about Officer Mark. He had acted out of duty, yet his hesitation and nervousness had been clear. She did not judge him. In her years of experience, she had seen many young officers make mistakes, often due to inexperience or pressure to prove themselves. Her goal was not to punish or lecture, but to show patience and grace. She had learned that sometimes teaching a lesson without anger left a deeper impression. The city streets gradually gave way to quieter roads leading to the outskirts where the military base was located. Trees lined the sides of the road and the sun created patterns of light and shadow that danced across the asphalt. The car moved smoothly, its tires humming quietly over the pavement. Lena maintained a calm, steady pace, taking in the beauty of the morning while keeping her focus on the base ahead. Back in the city, Officer Mark decided to continue his patrol. He checked his map and realized that he would pass near the military base on his route. He felt a sudden urge to ensure everything was safe there, as if fate had given him a chance to see the situation more clearly. He drove carefully, keeping an eye on the roads, and wondered how Lena would be received by her fellow officers at the base. Preparations for the ceremony were already underway. Soldiers moved with precision, arranging flags, setting up chairs, and making sure everything was ready for the event. Lena's colleagues were excited and respectful, aware of her dedication and the hard work she had invested over the years. They admired her calm confidence and her ability to lead without raising her voice or demanding attention. As Lena approached the entrance to the base, she parked her car in the designated area. She opened the door and took a moment to adjust her bag containing the uniform. She gently lifted it and checked each fold, each badge, and each insignia. Everything was perfect. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and then straightened her posture. Today, she would not only participate in the ceremony but also set an example of dignity, respect, and humility. Inside the base, Officer Thomas, a colleague of Lena, greeted her with a respectful nod. "Good morning, Colonel," he said, acknowledging her rank with the appropriate decorum. Lena returned the nod with a small smile. She appreciated the respect but never let it make her feel superior. Leadership, she believed, was not about pride or showing power but about serving others and setting an example through actions. Meanwhile, back on the road, Officer Mark continued his patrol, trying to focus on his duties but unable to shake the image of Lena standing by her car earlier. He remembered her calm demeanor, the polite way she had answered his questions, and the quiet strength that had been evident even before he knew her rank. His mind kept returning to the uniform, the golden badges, and the confidence she had carried. He realized he had learned more from that encounter than he could have imagined. Mark continued driving along the base perimeter, checking for anything unusual. He observed the soldiers preparing for the ceremony and noted the sense of order and discipline that permeated the area. Everything was running smoothly, and he felt a sense of reassurance. Yet, he could not forget the lesson he had received earlier that morning. He vowed to himself that he would approach every situation with more patience, fairness, and respect for every individual, regardless of appearances or possessions. At the same time, Lena had begun changing into her full uniform. She carefully folded her civilian clothes and placed them aside. Then she stepped into the uniform, adjusting each part with precision. The jacket fit perfectly, the badges gleamed under the indoor lights, and her posture became even more confident. When she looked in the mirror, she saw not only her reflection but also the symbol of years of dedication, hard work, and commitment to her country. Her fellow officers watched as she completed the transformation. They respected her greatly, not just because of her rank but because of the way she carried herself. Her calm presence inspired confidence and trust in everyone around her. Lena understood that respect was earned through actions, patience, and humility, not by demanding it or showing authority. As the ceremony began, the room filled with officers, soldiers, and guests. Lena walked to the front, carrying herself with quiet dignity. She was introduced to the audience, and they applauded respectfully. She spoke about duty, fairness, and respect, emphasizing the importance of judging people based on their actions and character rather than appearances or possessions. Her speech was clear, simple, and powerful, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Back on the streets, Officer Mark finished his patrol and returned to the station. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. The morning encounter with Lena had changed his perspective. He understood that judging someone too quickly could lead to mistakes and that patience and respect were crucial in every interaction. He decided to write a note in his journal, reflecting on the lesson he had learned and promising himself to apply it in his future work. As the day continued, Mark could not help but think about the contrast between his earlier doubts and the calm authority Lena had displayed. He remembered how she had answered his questions politely, allowed him to check the car, and yet never lost her composure. He realized that true strength and confidence were not always visible at first glance, and sometimes it took an unexpected encounter to reveal them. Meanwhile, Lena completed her duties at the ceremony with grace. She received congratulations from her peers and the commanding officers. She remained humble, acknowledging the efforts of everyone around her. Her presence reminded everyone that leadership was not about pride or status but about service, patience, and respect. As the sun began to set, Lena returned to her car. She carefully folded the uniform back into the bag and prepared for the drive home. Her mind was calm, satisfied with the day's events, and ready to face the next challenges with the same dignity and composure she had shown throughout her career. Officer Mark, reflecting on the day, realized that some lessons could only be learned through experience. He felt grateful for the encounter, knowing that it would influence the way he approached every situation in the future. He had seen patience, humility, and quiet authority in action, and he understood that these qualities were far more powerful than any uniform, badge, or car. The city streets were quieter now as night approached. Mark finished his final checks and prepared to return to the station. He thought about how a simple moment on a road could turn into a life-changing lesson. The encounter with Lena had shown him that respect, patience, and understanding were values that mattered above all else. The morning air was crisp as Lena prepared to leave the military base. The ceremony had concluded successfully, and her colleagues had offered warm congratulations. She walked calmly to her car, carrying herself with quiet dignity. The uniform she had worn for the event now rested neatly in her bag, each badge shining under the sun. She carefully placed it inside the back seat and closed the car door with practiced ease. Officer Mark was still at the station reflecting on the morning events. He could not shake the memory of Lena's calm demeanor, the careful precision with which she had handled the stop, and the impressive uniform he had glimpsed in the back seat of her car. He knew he had acted hastily, making assumptions without knowing the full story. That moment on the street had left him embarrassed but also profoundly aware of the importance of patience and fairness in his work. Mark decided to resume his patrol along the roads near the base. The streets were quieter now, with only a few vehicles passing by. He drove slowly, thinking about how easily people could be misjudged. He recalled Lena's polite responses, her composed body language, and the quiet confidence she displayed even when confronted with a tense situation. The memory made him feel both respect and regret for his own earlier behavior. Meanwhile, Lena started her drive home. She moved through the roads with care, keeping the speed steady and watching her surroundings. The city was transitioning from morning to late afternoon, and the streets were now busier with cars returning from work and school buses on their routes. She remained focused, aware that her journey required attention and responsibility. As she drove, Lena reflected on the encounter with Officer Mark. She understood why he had stopped her. In his eyes, the car was too luxurious to belong to someone ordinary, and he had acted according to what he believed was his duty. Lena did not take offense. She knew that assumptions were natural, especially in a world where appearances often misled people. Her goal was not to punish, lecture, or shame him, but to demonstrate patience, humility, and grace in every interaction. She carefully navigated the traffic and approached a traffic light. The cars in front of her moved forward slowly, and she waited patiently. Her thoughts were calm, as if the quiet of the streets mirrored the control she carried inside herself. She thought about the importance of setting examples through actions rather than words. Today, every small decision mattered, even how she responded to others' judgments. Officer Mark continued driving along the outskirts of the base, observing the routines of the soldiers and officers still on duty. He could see the discipline and order of the base from a distance. The sight reminded him of Lena's words about fairness, respect, and patience. He realized how much he could learn from her example and promised himself to approach future stops with more care. Meanwhile, Lena reached a quieter street where the sun reflected softly on the pavement. She adjusted the seat, kept her hand steady, and ensured the uniform bag in the back seat was secure. As she approached a curve, a sudden thought crossed her mind about how fragile first impressions could be. Officer Mark had judged her quickly, but she had maintained composure, and the lesson had been delivered without confrontation. She felt satisfaction, knowing that sometimes patience alone could teach more than anger or argument. Mark's patrol car passed through the same route a few minutes later. He observed cars, pedestrians, and cyclists with renewed attention. His focus had shifted. He noticed subtle details he might have ignored earlier: the way a pedestrian crossed carefully, the way a cyclist signaled turns, the way drivers communicated with polite gestures rather than horns. He felt a new sense of responsibility, realizing that fairness and patience were essential in every interaction. As Lena continued, she noticed a small child struggling to carry a backpack across the street. She slowed her car, gave a polite wave, and allowed the child to pass safely. Her actions were simple but reflected the calm authority she carried. She understood that leadership was not only about rank or uniforms but also about small but consistent actions that inspired trust and confidence in others. Mark noticed the same scene from a distance. He saw her kindness and thought about how easy it was to misjudge people. He remembered his own mistake earlier in the day and felt a deeper understanding of humility and patience. He realized that every stop, every encounter, and every decision carried weight beyond the immediate situation. Lena reached a point where the road opened to a view of the city skyline. She slowed her car to admire the sight for a brief moment, taking in the calm beauty of the afternoon. Her mind was steady and her heart was composed. She felt pride in her work, satisfaction in her service, and confidence in her ability to influence others through actions rather than words. At the same time, Officer Mark's thoughts drifted to how quickly assumptions could mislead even a trained officer. He recalled the moment Lena had opened the car door, her calm expression, the respectful tone in her voice, and the subtle authority she carried. He realized that the lesson she had delivered through patience and composure was more powerful than any reprimand or correction. Lena continued her journey toward home. The streets gradually became familiar neighborhoods, lined with trees, houses, and small shops. She drove carefully, aware of every pedestrian, cyclist, and vehicle around her. She remained alert, demonstrating the same responsibility and attention to detail that marked her career in the military. Meanwhile, Mark drove past the base perimeter one last time. He observed the soldiers completing their tasks, the orderly environment, and the sense of discipline that pervaded the area. He felt a quiet admiration for Lena's ability to maintain calm in every situation. He reflected on the lessons he had learned that morning. Patience, fairness, and respect were essential qualities for every officer, and judging people based on appearances could lead to serious mistakes. Lena parked her car at her home and carefully lifted the uniform bag from the back seat. She took a moment to check that every badge, every fold, and every detail remained perfect. She placed the bag neatly in her room, ensuring that the uniform would remain ready for the next duty. Her routine was disciplined and calm, reflecting the values she had always held: precision, responsibility, and respect back on the streets. Officer Mark finished his patrol and returned to the station. He felt a sense of renewed purpose. The encounter with Lena had left a lasting impression, reminding him that even small moments could teach significant lessons. He promised himself that he would approach every stop with patience, fairness, and respect, regardless of appearances or assumptions. As evening approached, the city's lights began to turn on, casting a warm glow on the streets. Lena reflected on her day with satisfaction, knowing that she had performed her duties well and maintained her values in every situation. She understood that true leadership was shown through actions, patience, and integrity, and she had lived those principles throughout the day. Mark, meanwhile, continued to think about the impact of his actions. He realized that respect and fairness were not optional but essential in his role as an officer. He thought about Lena's calm demeanor, her careful handling of the stop, and her quiet authority. He understood that people's true character could not be judged by appearances alone, and that patience and humility often spoke louder than authority or rank. That evening, Lena reflected on the encounter with Officer Mark once more. She had handled it without anger or frustration, knowing that patience and composure could teach more than confrontation. She had demonstrated that leadership and respect were earned through actions, not assumed through appearances. The lesson she delivered had been quiet but profound, leaving a lasting impact on the young officer. Mark, at his desk in the station, wrote down his reflections in a small notebook. He described the encounter with Lena, the lessons he had learned about patience, fairness, and humility, and the importance of judging people based on actions rather than appearances. He promised himself that he would carry these lessons into every interaction, becoming a wiser, more respectful, and more attentive officer. As the night settled over the city, both Lena and Mark ended their day with a sense of calm. Lena had fulfilled her duties with dignity and precision, and Mark had learned a lesson that would shape his approach to his work forever. Their brief encounter on the morning streets had created a moment of learning, growth, and respect that neither of them would forget. The next morning, Officer Mark returned to his usual patrol route. The memory of the previous day's encounter with Lena stayed with him, influencing the way he observed everything around him. He noticed small details he might have ignored before: the careful way drivers obeyed traffic rules, the patience pedestrians showed while crossing streets, and the calm manners of people interacting on sidewalks. Each observation reminded him of the lesson Lena had taught him, that appearances often hid the truth, and that fairness and patience were essential. Mark approached the main road where he had first seen Lena's car. His eyes scanned slowly, searching for any sign of unusual activity. When he reached the corner, he saw a sleek black car approaching. His heart skipped a beat. The car moved calmly, without haste, yet it carried an unmistakable presence. He recognized it immediately. It was Lena, heading once again toward the military base. As she pulled over slightly to allow a pedestrian to cross, Mark stopped his patrol car nearby, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Today, he told himself, he would handle any interaction with care and respect. He remembered the last encounter and felt determined to approach things differently. This time, he wanted to honor the lesson he had learned instead of repeating the same mistake. Lena parked her car and stepped out. She carried herself with the same calm dignity as always. Her movements were precise, controlled, and quiet. Mark observed her carefully, noting the small details: the way her shoulders were straight, the confident yet gentle expression on her face, and the subtle authority that she carried effortlessly. He felt a renewed respect for her professionalism and character. As Lena approached the entrance to the base, a few soldiers waved politely. She nodded to them, returning the gesture with grace. Mark watched from a distance, reflecting on the importance of leadership shown through actions. Lena's ability to command respect without raising her voice or asserting power was remarkable. Every movement, every gesture, every expression demonstrated the strength of character she had developed through years of service. Mark continued to observe quietly. He noticed how people responded to her naturally, without fear or hesitation. The respect she inspired was not demanded but earned through consistency, patience, and integrity. He felt a deep admiration for her, realizing how important it was to approach every encounter with understanding rather than judgment. Inside the base, preparations for the day's routine duties were underway. Lena entered a building where she would oversee a series of inspections. She carried her bag with the uniform carefully, knowing that soon she would don it again for official duties. Her focus was calm and steady. As always, she checked each item, ensuring that everything was in perfect order before addressing the officers and soldiers who looked to her for guidance. Officer Mark, though still outside the base, continued to reflect on what he had learned. He thought about how quickly assumptions could mislead even a trained officer, and how easily misunderstandings could arise. He remembered the moment Lena had revealed the uniform, and the sudden awareness of her rank had left him frozen with surprise and respect. That memory reminded him that humility and patience were essential qualities for every law enforcement officer. Meanwhile, Lena prepared for her official duties. She carefully unfolded the uniform, adjusted each badge, and ensured that the insignia were perfectly aligned. Every movement was precise, demonstrating years of experience and discipline. She understood that her actions, no matter how small, reflected her dedication to service and her respect for the responsibilities entrusted to her. Once she was fully dressed, Lena took a deep breath and straightened her posture. She looked around at the officers gathered before her, all of whom respected her greatly. Her calm expression conveyed both authority and kindness, reminding everyone that true leadership relied on fairness, patience, and integrity. She began the inspections with confidence, moving through the rooms with a steady and composed presence. Back on the street, Officer Mark continued to watch from a distance. He observed how her colleagues responded to her directions, not with fear but with genuine cooperation. Every instruction was followed, every action was respectful, and the environment radiated order and calm. Mark felt a profound respect for Lena and a renewed understanding of the importance of observing before judging. Later, as Lena completed the inspections, she addressed the officers with a few words of guidance. Her speech was calm, clear, and precise. She emphasized the importance of diligence, teamwork, and integrity. She reminded them that respect was earned through actions, patience, and humility. Her message was simple yet powerful, and the officers listened attentively, absorbing every word with respect and focus. Officer Mark remained outside the base, reflecting on every detail. He thought about his initial assumptions, the mistake he had made by judging her too quickly, and the lesson she had imparted without raising her voice. He realized that encounters like these were rare, and that the wisdom gained from observing someone with such calm authority was invaluable. After the inspections, Lena prepared to leave for the next part of her day. She carefully folded the uniform bag, ensuring that every badge remained neat and polished. She moved to her car with the same quiet dignity, aware that even small actions could inspire respect. She opened the door, placed the bag securely in the back seat, and took a moment to adjust her seating position, preparing for a smooth drive. Officer Mark, observing from a nearby corner, felt a mixture of admiration and humility. He knew that this brief encounter had changed his perspective. The way Lena conducted herself, handled authority, and maintained composure even in challenging situations left a lasting impression. He realized that respect and fairness were not optional but essential qualities for every person, especially those entrusted with responsibility. As Lena drove away from the base, she remained calm and focused. She navigated the streets carefully, observing traffic, pedestrians, and cyclists with attention and patience. Her presence inspired a subtle sense of order and calm, even among people who did not know her personally. The quiet strength she carried was evident in every action she took. Officer Mark followed her at a respectful distance for a short while, reflecting on the morning and the lessons it had provided. He thought about how easily assumptions could mislead, how quickly appearances could create misunderstandings, and how important it was to approach every encounter with fairness and patience. He knew that these lessons would influence every decision he made in the future. Lena eventually reached a small park near the city where she had planned to pause briefly. She parked her car and stepped out, taking a moment to enjoy the calm surroundings. The morning light filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow on the pathway. She breathed in deeply, appreciating the quiet moment before continuing her duties. Mark watched from a distance as she moved gracefully through the park. He noted her calm composure, the way she interacted politely with a few civilians passing by, and the subtle authority she carried even in a peaceful setting. He realized that true strength was not always visible in words or actions alone, but often in the quiet confidence of someone who led by example. After a brief pause, Lena returned to her car and continued her journey. She remained focused, aware that her responsibilities were far from finished. Her calm presence, attention to detail, and disciplined approach to every task reflected her years of experience and the respect she had earned from those around her. Officer Mark returned to his patrol route, carrying with him the lessons he had learned from observing Lena. He thought about the importance of fairness, patience, and humility in every interaction. He reflected on how easily he had misjudged her the day before and how much he had gained by witnessing her calm authority and professional demeanor. As the day progressed, both Lena and Officer Mark continued their separate routines, yet their experiences were connected by the brief but meaningful encounter on the street. Each carried a sense of reflection and understanding, shaped by the respect and patience they had witnessed and learned. Mark understood now that leadership was not about appearances, wealth, or even titles alone. It was about calm composure, integrity, and the ability to inspire respect through actions rather than words. Lena's presence, patience, and quiet authority had delivered that lesson in a way that would remain with him for a long time. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, Lena concluded her duties at the park and returned to her car. She carefully folded the uniform bag once more, checked that everything was neat, and began her drive back home. Her day had been long, but she carried herself with the same calm dignity that had marked every moment of her service. Officer Mark, finishing his shift, felt a sense of gratitude for the lessons he had learned. The encounter with Lena had shown him the importance of patience, fairness, and respect in every interaction. He realized that the experience would shape the way he approached his work and how he treated people in the future. The quiet streets of the city at dusk reflected the calmness both Lena and Mark carried within them. Their paths had crossed briefly, but the impact of that encounter was significant. Lessons of respect, humility, and composure had been shared without conflict, leaving a lasting impression on both of them. The next day began quietly for Lena. She had a few official duties to attend at the base, but her mind was calm. The events of the previous days had passed, yet the lessons they contained remained fresh. She knew that every encounter, every decision, and every moment carried weight. The respect she received was not demanded. It was earned through her actions, patience, and consistency. Lena parked her car near the entrance to the base and took a moment to adjust her uniform bag. She had planned the day carefully, and she intended to complete every task with the same calm diligence that had guided her career. The morning air was clear, and the soft light of the sun reflected off the polished badges on her uniform bag. She straightened her posture and walked inside, ready to address the officers and soldiers who depended on her guidance. Inside the main building, she met with her fellow officers to review the day's schedule. They greeted her with respect and attentiveness, and she acknowledged them with a polite nod. Every conversation, every instruction, was handled with clarity and calm authority. Lena knew that leadership was more than rank or authority. It was the quiet influence one had on others through patience, fairness, and example. Meanwhile, Officer Mark was already on patrol, reflecting on his actions from earlier encounters with Lena. He had spent the past few days thinking deeply about the lessons she had taught him without ever speaking harshly or raising her voice. Her calm composure and quiet confidence had impressed him. He realized that his judgments had been premature, based on assumptions rather than facts. He resolved to apply what he had learned in every interaction with the public moving forward. As Lena moved through the base, she prepared for another inspection. She unfolded her uniform and adjusted it with meticulous care. Every badge, every insignia, and every fold was in perfect order. Her attention to detail reflected her respect for her responsibilities and her commitment to excellence. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and stepped into the main hall to begin her work. Officer Mark, on a nearby street, observed the activity at the base from a distance. Even though he was not part of the base operations, he felt a connection to the lessons he had learned. He watched as soldiers moved in orderly lines, obeying instructions calmly and efficiently. He thought about how different the world could be if every person approached their duties with the same patience and respect that Lena demonstrated. Inside the main hall, Lena addressed the assembled officers and soldiers. Her speech was calm, measured, and confident. She spoke about responsibility, the importance of integrity, and the need to lead by example. Her words were clear and simple, yet they carried a profound impact. Everyone in the room listened attentively, absorbing every word. Lena's presence inspired respect, not fear, and her message emphasized fairness, humility, and diligence. Officer Mark, reflecting on his own experiences, realized that encounters like the one he had with Lena were rare but transformative. He understood now that true authority was not about demanding attention or recognition. It was about calm composure, consistency, and the ability to influence others through example rather than words alone. Lena had demonstrated this perfectly in every action she took, whether driving her car, interacting with civilians, or addressing the soldiers at the base. Later in the day, Lena completed her inspections and moved to a quiet outdoor area for a short break. She leaned against her car, enjoying the soft breeze and observing the orderly activity around her. Even in this small pause, her presence inspired calm and confidence in those nearby. She understood that leadership was continuous, not limited to formal speeches or inspections. Every moment, every action, carried the potential to influence and inspire others. Officer Mark, on patrol near the base, watched from a distance as Lena continued her duties. He saw how naturally she commanded respect and attention without asserting power or authority aggressively. He realized that the lessons he had learned applied not only to law enforcement but to life in general. Patience, fairness, and humility were qualities that could shape every interaction and every relationship, creating understanding and trust. As the afternoon progressed, Lena returned to her car and carefully folded her uniform bag once again. She adjusted the seat and mirrors, ensuring everything was comfortable for her drive. Her movements were precise and calm, reflecting the disciplined approach she had maintained throughout her day. She started the engine and moved steadily down the streets leading away from the base. Officer Mark continued his patrol with a new sense of awareness. He approached intersections more patiently, observed drivers with careful attention, and treated every interaction as an opportunity to practice the lessons he had learned from Lena. Her calm authority and composure had left a lasting impression, and he knew that the awareness she had inspired would influence his career for years to come. As Lena drove through the city, she noticed a small crowd gathering near a public park. Children played while adults walked or spoke quietly among themselves. She slowed the car, observing their interactions, and offered a polite nod to a few pedestrians passing by. Her simple gestures reflected her calm presence and quiet authority. Even without speaking, she influenced the environment around her, inspiring a sense of order and respect. Officer Mark, passing by on patrol, noticed the same scene. He saw how Lena's calm demeanor affected everyone nearby. The children moved carefully, the adults spoke quietly, and the atmosphere carried a sense of peace. He realized that true leadership was not about commanding attention or enforcing rules with fear. It was about demonstrating patience, respect, and composure, qualities that Lena had embodied in every action he had witnessed. Lena eventually reached her home. She parked the car, adjusted the uniform bag, and carefully placed it in her room. Every detail was neat and organized, reflecting her disciplined approach to life. She took a moment to relax, appreciating the calm after a long and productive day. Her mind was at ease, knowing that she had completed her duties with dignity and consistency. Officer Mark returned to the station, finishing his patrol for the day. He reflected on the lessons he had learned from Lena, the encounter on the street, and the example she had set throughout her career. He felt gratitude for the opportunity to witness such calm authority and to learn from it. The experience had changed the way he approached his work, interactions with the public, and his understanding of respect and patience. That evening, as the city lights began to glow softly, Lena prepared for the next day. She reviewed her schedule, organized her tasks, and ensured that everything was ready for another day of duties. Her focus remained calm and steady, reflecting the discipline and patience that had guided her career. She understood that every action mattered, and she approached each task with the same integrity she had shown throughout her life. Officer Mark, closing his notebook for the night, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had learned a valuable lesson about assumptions, patience, and respect. The encounter with Lena had taught him that appearances could be misleading and that true authority was demonstrated through composure, integrity, and consistent action. He promised himself that he would carry these lessons into every part of his life. The night was quiet over the city. The streets glowed softly under the streetlights, and a gentle breeze moved through the trees. Lena rested for the evening, satisfied with the day's accomplishments. Officer Mark reflected on the lessons he had learned, knowing that he had become wiser and more attentive because of a brief encounter with a remarkable individual. In the days that followed, the lesson remained with Officer Mark. He approached every situation with greater care, fairness, and patience. His interactions with civilians became calmer and more respectful, and he learned to observe carefully before making judgments. Lena, unaware of the deep impact she had on the young officer, continued her duties with the same calm diligence and integrity she had always demonstrated. The encounter on that quiet morning had created a lasting connection, not through words or confrontation, but through example. Lena's patience, authority, and consistency had taught a lesson that extended far beyond a single moment on the street. Officer Mark carried that lesson forward, applying it to his work, his life, and his understanding of respect and fairness. By the end of the week, both Lena and Officer Mark had returned to their routines, yet their paths had crossed in a way that left a permanent impression. Lena continued to serve with dignity, her presence inspiring calm and respect wherever she went. Officer Mark grew into a wiser officer, guided by the lessons he had learned from observing her patience, humility, and quiet authority. The story concluded not with conflict or confrontation, but with growth, understanding, and mutual respect. A brief encounter on a quiet morning had changed the course of a young officer's approach to duty and revealed the true power of calm composure, patience, and integrity. Lena had led by example, and Officer Mark had learned the value of fairness and observation. Their lives, though separate, were forever influenced by that single, meaningful moment.